6TR, the bright side of Staffordshire.
6 Times Radio is always a fun house, and it's going to be a funner house right now because it's got Pat Sharp on the line right now. Hello, Pat. How are you doing?
I'm good, Terry. You?
Yeah, brilliant, thank you. Radio is a great thing, and it's in your blood. Can you remember how long it is now since you first started on the old wireless?
Absolutely, and it very much was the old wireless when I started. I was playing records, CDs didn't exist, and had a little record duster that you were given when you were given your music from a box at the BBC. I started on Radio 1 in 1982, which is kind of a weird place to start. It's been downhill from there.
Of course, that's how you first got into radio. And how did you get the job? And how old were you?
Well, I was 20 years old, and I sat in for Steve Wright in the afternoon when he was doing what he does now on Radio 2, but back in the day when he was doing it on Radio 1, and I was kind of, I have to say, to be honest with you, Terry, I was right place, right time. I was lucky. I was, just had a good manager who looked after lots of other Radio 1 DJs at the time, the likes of Mike Reed and Paul Gambaccini and Simon Bates and Annie Nightingale and basically everybody who was the stars of the day, and he convinced the boss of Radio 1 to give me a shot on the air, even though I'd never actually even done a hospital radio show, so extremely lucky.
Yeah, and you said the word stars. Radio presenters in the 80s were massive stars. You were on top of the pops. You were playing to millions more than they are now. It must have been quite a good ride at the time.
I would say I was really in the right time, certainly in the late 80s when I joined Capital, it was, we were like pop stars really, and also we ended up being pop stars.
Yes.
We made the charity records as Pat and Mick, so, we ended up, it was quite ironic really, you were treated like a pop star as a DJ, and then we ended up on top of the pops, singing pop records that were raising money for charity, albeit, but we were being introduced by our rival Radio 1 DJs as two Capital Radio DJs, which I think they found quite amusing, and so did we.
Yeah.
It was heady times compared to now, when perhaps radio, I guess, is considerably diluted just due to the amount of stations and the way that people can access radio via, a smartphone, etc.
Yeah, and a lot of syndication nowadays where every local radio station had live presenters 24/7 pretty much.
Yeah, things have really changed, and I don't think it's quite as exciting as it used to be. I can remember when people would be excited to get what they now call a shout out, which we called a dedication back in the day. And if you got a mention on the radio, you would tape it on a cassette radio and you would play it to your friends, and you would be probably one of the most famous guys in the town that day because everyone would have heard you, and everyone would be, oh my God, you got a mention on the radio. Whereas now it's all a bit blasé, and people go, well, yeah, I've got my own radio station, I run it from my bedroom, and also I'm on TV, and I've got a video channel that's on here, and I've got a YouTube channel on this, and I broadcast my own this and that, and it's just the world is such a fast-moving place these days. It's very different.
Yeah, and going back to when you first started, can you remember, I've asked so many people this question, not many people know the answer, can you remember the first record you played on the air?
I can, yeah, very much. I think one never forgets that. What was yours?
Mine was DOA by the Foo Fighters, for some reason.
Okay, there you are. Mine was a song called I Eat Cannibals by Toto Coelho.
I remember it well. All I want to do is make a meal of you.
Yeah, that's it, yeah. I eat cannibals, it's incredible. Yeah, I remember I was on between Dave Lee Travis and Peter Powell on Radio 1 with an audience of heaven knows how many millions of people listening, and all they did was put my name in the Radio Times saying 2 o'clock, Pat Sharp, and DLT was on before me going, well, Pat Sharp's on at 2 o'clock. He goes, I know you never heard about him. I know you don't know who he is. I know you've never heard about this person, he said. I know don't know who this person is. He goes, and the reason I'm saying this person is because, let's face it, Pat could be a woman. We don't know. Let's wait and see. And so everybody was tuned in at 2 to see if I was a girl or a boy, which by the time it got to about 1987, people were wondering the same thing when they looked at me, but there you go.
Yes, the hair, of course, the most famous 80s hair. I think you and Lamar definitely had that nailed down.
Yeah, I still do quite a few gigs with Limahl all over the place. I've been with him to Norway and a few other countries and lots in the UK, and he's got very short hair these days, but we did have some good times with our hair that was all business at the front, all party at the back.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. And then you, of course, got onto TV as well. The Funhouse was a massive part of a lot of listeners' childhood and adulthood as well, because like we all watched it. That must have been so much of a laugh to make.
Yeah, you're very kind. I mean, we did have a good time. I mean, we used to make the shows from taking off 1 week holiday from Capital Radio and going to Scotland, going to Glasgow, and recording a whole series in 1 week in Scottish television in Glasgow. So we would go there and take a week off holiday, and that would be 7 days off, as in a weekend and 5 weekdays, and we would do 14 shows, which was 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon. 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon for 7 days, which is 14. And 14 shows is obviously 14 weeks, which is 3 months and 2 weeks. And that was how long the series was. And that was once a year. So I only ever spent 1 week a year making Funhouse, but we did it for 12 years.
It was brilliant. Again, I wasn't a child when that was on, to be honest. And I used to watch it, and everyone did. It's one of those programmes which was much loved by the adults too.
Oh, it's kind of you. I mean, all I will say at this stage is just watch this space for something in 2018, which is adult Funhouse related.
Ooh, I like the sound of that.
There you go. Heard it first here, exclusive for you, Terry.
Brilliant. That will excite a lot of people. So you've had like Char Hits, and you've actually presented the chart as well. That must be some fun to do, because the secrecy around it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I was like Kid Jensen's cover on the network chart show, so I used to do it, sort of 8 or 10 weeks a year when he was on holiday, and do the chart. And it was kind of given to you on a sheet and everything, and you were told what was in there, and you couldn't reveal anything until you started to run down the numbers. And I think in those days, perhaps not so much when I was doing it, but certainly when I was a kid and when you were younger, even before I was deputising on it, it was a very, very big thing, the chart. And, everybody listened to it. Everybody knew who number one was. Everyone was excited about finding out who number one was. Whereas now, I don't think even kids of 15 care who number one is and probably don't even know.
It's Ed Sheeran, probably, at any one time.
No, he's not number one. He's number everything.
Yeah. Ed Sheeran songs like Ratch, you're never more than 6 feet away from one. But he's a good lad. He's doing all right.
Absolutely.
If you didn't get into radio and TV, what do you think your career could have been? Did you have any aspirations when you were younger to do something else?
Yeah, I think I would have enjoyed being a car mechanic. I still, to this day, tinker around with a lot of cars and motorbikes. I've got an old motorbike that's 41 years old that I've restored myself and play around with and use in the summer and take to shows and stuff. So I'm quite good at that kind of geeky stuff. I quite like opening a bonnet and having a look around the engine. But these days, once again, like radio, it's changed so much. If you open the bonnet of a car these days, there's nothing you can touch. It's all covered up, and you've got to take it to a garage where they plug it in. So it's pretty different, as you know. But I think maybe a car mechanic would have been something I could have been interested in. But I've been too busy spending 35 years doing this, so I've had no time.
Definitely. What advice could you give to anyone who wants to present on the radio who's listening today?
I would say, and I'm not being harsh, but I'm being honest, I would say that if you do it as a hobby, because you're going to need another job to fund it, because it's not particularly well paid for starters. It's not particularly well paid for some people who've been in it for years now, because it's just a diluted industry, and there are, as I say, a lot of radio stations all fighting for the same piece of cake. And the advertising revenue around it doesn't reflect on paying people great money for doing it. But if you love it and you want to do it, then why not try and find maybe a hospital station or a community radio station? That's quite good as well, where you can actually broadcast on FM. There's quite a few of those where they'd be happy to have you, and you could turn up and do a show. You wouldn't get paid for it, but you could probably convince them to give you a shot if you were any good, and you'd be on the air and you would be able to be heard on an FM station. Then from that, you can make yourself a little show reel, demo tape, which you would then send out to bigger radio stations and try and get a response from them as to what they think about it and push yourself up the ladder. But meanwhile, while you're doing that, obviously, and even perhaps when you've even got a job, you perhaps need to have another job around it to fund it, because it's just not particularly well paid at present.
Yeah, perfect advice that is, because you've got to get your foot through the door somehow, and doing it for free and volunteering maybe is a good way of doing it. Well, Pat Sharp, you're still a legend to millions. Thank you very much for joining me today to talk about radio.
You're very kind, Terry. Have a good day.